Welcome to this important discussion today as part of Europe Day celebrations in Armenia. The topic that we're discussing today is unleashing the potential of the regions in Armenia. And in a couple of minutes, I will introduce our esteemed panel to you. But before that, I would like to ask for a few words of welcome from Her Excellency Ambassador Andrea Victorin, the head of the European Union delegation in Armenia.
Thank you so much. We are really happy to have this discussion. I think it is one of the really important topics we have right now here in Armenia, especially also after the events we saw yesterday, and we follow this with great concern. So it is perhaps to take one topic ahead is we are going south now, because I think it is needed that we support not only the region of Syunik, but also help to build up security in this region. And I have to apologize, I will slowly sneak out at 11:45 because I'm called in the foreign ministry, I think also on these events. So my apologies, but Gonzalo Serrano, my head of cooperation, is then taking over. So I wish you all a very interesting morning. I'm sad that we cannot let everybody in who wanted to participate. This is unfortunately due to the COVID restrictions we have, but you can follow the event online.
Okay, let's go ahead. So starting with the panelist on my right, Mr. Armen Tiratuyan represents the UNDP, and he is the project manager for the EU Lead for Lori and Tavush Regions project. Madam Ambassador, we already know, and as she mentioned, she will be replaced by Mr. Gonzalo Serrano, the head of cooperation at the EU delegation, in about 40 minutes or so. Brigitte Mehlmauer is from the Austrian Development Agency and the team leader of the EU Lead for Chirac project. And Mr. Koryun Khachaturian is the managing director of Children of Armenia Fund, COAF. We also have a few guests in the audience. I would like to particularly mention the ambassador of Romania to Armenia, His Excellency Cornel Ionescu, as well as Mr. Barcha Christoph from the Embassy of Poland in Armenia. We also have wonderful guests from the UNDP, the Urban Foundation, the Communities Finance Officers Association, the Union of Advanced Technology Enterprises, and so on. I apologize for not mentioning each of you by name, but I would like to say we have a very important topic to discuss today, and Madam Ambassador, thank you very much for mentioning the events in Syunik over the past 24 hours, as well as the plans that the EU delegation has to move to this area. We think that is very, very important, and I'm sure it's on the minds of many of our audience members in the room, as well as following online today. I would like to set the stage for this discussion by talking a little bit about the situation in Armenia in general, the disparity that exists between the capital of Armenia, Yerevan, and the regions of Armenia. So we have seen throughout the last decades that poverty has been at very, very different levels in the capital and in the regions. And while to some extent this might be acceptable, let's look at the actual numbers to get a sense of the real, the sense of how different this is. So the average poverty rate in Armenia was 26.4% in 2019. In Yerevan, this is only 14.1%. But if we look at the regions, then it's way above the national average. It's 51.7% in Aragazotan, 48.7% in Shirak, 43.5% in Gerarkunik, 31.9% in Kotaik, 30.1% in Lori, and 29.4% in Ararat. So even in the more prosperous regions of Armenia, it is higher than the national average, and obviously much, much higher than Yerevan. The gross domestic product of Yerevan accounts for 54.1% of the whole of Armenia's gross domestic product. So my first question, and I would like to ask this question to two of the panelists who have lived outside of Armenia and have experience working outside of Armenia as well. To what extent do you see disparity between the capital and the regions of Western European countries? Let me start with that. And because I know you both have experience also working in Eastern European countries, I would like to also hear from that point of view. So, Madam Ambassador, let me start with you. While we still have you today.
Yeah. First of all, yes, we have perhaps not with these dramatic figures, but I think we see this also in Europe. It is a question, you have different member states, yeah? You have centralized member states where you have naturally most of the economic growth and also universities are concentrated on the capital. You have other, like my own country, Germany. We are a federal state, so, but also within a federal state where, let's say, we have a broader participation also of the different countries. You have regions that are in more difficult situation due to border regions not developed. We have West Germany and East Germany, so there you can see similar things. And yes, I have also seen it in other countries I worked in. Let's say if you see the broader sphere of the post-Soviet countries, you can see that there was a trend. It was always getting better education, better healthcare. You went to the capital. So I think that is why we are very active, really, to go into the regions and to help to develop both economy but also health systems, social care in the regions.
To me earlier as well that you just moved to Armenia in January. I'd also like to ask, as a very fresh impression, what your impressions have been, especially of Shirak, where you've already done a lot of work, please.
So, thank you very much. Yes, right. I have moved to Armenia the first time in January this year, and I spent most of my time in the Shirak region to get to know the region, because we are working there for the next 4 years under the project which is implemented by the Austrian Development Agency. Yes, and of course already on the first week when I was here in Armenia, I spent in Yerevan to get the orientation here. And then mid of January, on a very cold day, I moved up to Gyumri, and I saw already the big difference. So I was here only for a few days, but of course seeing the road conditions, entering Gyumri, seeing the villages in between, I saw already the big disparity between what I experienced in a few days in Yerevan. People on the street, very nicely dressed, good houses, nice restaurants, music, so theaters, whatever you consider for a capital is here. And then going to Gyumri, of course, is a different experience. But I would like to say also something positive, not to see only the disparities. Of course, Yerevan is a city where a lot of people are living, very anonymous. But in Gyumri, I really have the feeling the people are there very open-minded, they are very friendly, they are interested what I'm doing here. And through many other people joining their events, going cross-country skiing to the villages, I really got to know already many people. So I think it's really related not to the people there, it's really related to the opportunities to see these disparities. And coming to the second part of your question, what we see in Europe, I can fully confirm what Mrs. Ambassador said. We have these disparities also in Europe, and not only in the new EU member states, also in the old member states. Look to Italy. We have a very prosperous industry region in the north. We have the Mezzogiorno in the south of Rome, where the European Union is using for decades to develop the country and to develop these regions. I'm coming from Austria, which is a rich country, but even there we have the problem that we have depopulation in regions, we have industry areas, where after the steel crisis in the 70s, the economic performance is going down for decades. We have depopulation, we have overage population living there, mostly retired people, and there are different reasons why it's happening. So it's a change in the economic, it's a change to the infrastructure. They is not so well developed, they are remote, they are not complying with the nowadays market demands. So, and of course, we also have our programs, because this is something what the European Union wants to overcome these disparities by different measures, but I think we will talk later on this subject.
Okay, better? Thank you very much. So we've talked about this disparity that exists, and yes, it exists in different countries as well. Let's move on now to the opportunities, and Brigitte already set the stage for that. You're talking about something more positive. Armen, let me start with you. Let's talk overall about Armenia. We'll have more chance to talk specifically about the Lead for Tavush and Lead for Lori project. But specifically, overall in Armenia, what opportunities, in your opinion, exist for the development of the region, for the growth of the region, and how can we better support these opportunities that are there?
Thank you. Armenia is a very diverse country, and our regions are bringing very different opportunities and wealth and history with them. We can go into all the details and do all the research, but what I can say for sure is that each region is unique in its nature, culture, tradition, opportunities, and the abilities. What is important in this case is to tap the right buttons in each region, because all regions can't go through one specified approach. And we need to make sure that the people living there have the capacities, have the opportunities, and have the motivation to build their own regions. I have to say that in the regions where I have worked in my past experiences, I have never seen a region that I would write off. All of the regions have their own potential. It's just a matter of motivating people. And a lot of times, in my opinion, the regions fall behind the development just because they don't have enough motivation and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It is, in my opinion, the task of all players, including international organizations, NGOs, government and regional, central and regional governments, to set the right playground for them, to empower them first. Of course, to provide also some financial opportunities. Of course, to provide some legal framework to move forward, to catch up with the regions. But what I'm convinced is that we can make the Armenian regions as advanced, well, I wouldn't say as advanced, but much more advanced than they are now. No region can, of course, compete with any capital. That's also face that as well, because the capital has all the administrative and all the resources concentrated. But we can make the regions stronger, wealthier, and we can make people not leaving the regions, just making the sometimes very small steps in the empowerment and in the putting the right framework and situation in the regions.
Thank you very much, Armen. Kodjun, I'd like to ask you a question based on what Armen said. I don't know how fair that is to you, but because I know that COAF has worked very intensely, very closely with many villages in several regions in Armenia. This question of motivation was a very interesting point that Armen raised. How have you seen this on the ground, motivation of people living in the regions? And what is the best combination of development projects? Projects that come bottom up from the grassroots, or projects that come top down, or some combination of the two?
Sorry, it's a very comprehensive question you're asking, Nazaret. I wouldn't lie to anyone. People are not motivated in the regions. And that's what we've been seeing for a very long time, 17 years. Since 2004, we've been working in rural areas only with the Children of Armenia Fund. And we've been investing both in people and in businesses and infrastructures. Motivation is not their forte. So And why is that, you might ask? Well, opportunities are not seen where people live in the regions. They always seek opportunities elsewhere. So one of the main tasks that we've been doing so far is looking with them at what we can do together in their, birthplaces or in the regions. Very complicated because we're talking about development here. We're talking about advancement or progress. So if you invest as an organization, not equally on people and on the environment, let's say, people leave the environment. They do not see themselves in that same environment. So they're very grateful. And we've had so many success stories, but those success stories have so far mostly been limited to people. So people have progressed a lot. They've acquired new skills and knowledge. We've opened doors to them. We've sent kids to the US through the Flex program, for instance, for a year. They came back. That's the objective. But again, when people come back, we've also done a lot of scholarships, higher, university degrees. They got the degrees. Do they see a return? Okay, so that's when the environment comes in. Meaning, in parallel, and this is a very challenging part for organizations such as, in parallel, we must deliver the same promise to the environment. We must, not only to the individuals, but also to the environment. And I think that's the most challenging part, because investing in people, it can be education, it can be capacity building programs, and so on and so forth, is much easier. We have the experience in Armenia. We have our counterparts in the EU who are helping a lot in that matter. That's not investment heavy. But when we talk about the environment, we're talking about regions who have been underinvested for so long. I'd like to give you a very simple example. We've been focusing lately on the Debet village in the Lori region. It's our focus right now. We're not giving up on anything else we've been doing so far, but we're putting the stress on Debet, on one single community. It's not a consolidated community, it's a single community. What we've seen, and we've analyzed, we've researched, we've looked into the history of the community. We've looked into the past. Almost nothing has happened in the past 30 years in Debet. Nothing. I mean, there are books written about the community, in Armenian, about people who are passionate about their people, their region. And what you're reading through the lines is, well, this family moved out, and then there was a wedding, and so things that, nothing has moved forward. And when you realize this, and when you compare it to a place where I come from France, a suburb of Paris, and you see how much it's being invested each year, every single year they're investing again, you're seeing that the gap the disparities is not huge. It's just getting bigger and bigger every year. And that awareness of, it's not about catching up, it's about moving forward every year regularly, because the others in Europe or the world, the advanced world, let's say, they're not stopping. So there was another, if you allow me, I'd like to give you another example of the mindset of the people. So we've had numerous council meetings with the mayor, with the people there, the locals, and I did a very short exercise. I compared two communities, one in Europe, in the EU, in France, where I was born, not that wealthy, but, a normal community, and Debet. And we compared it with something that we could compare it to each other. We compared the amount of money being invested each year through the municipality budget into each and every individual that is living in Paris or the suburb of Paris and Debet. The difference is 55-fold. So 55 times richer is the community in France compared to Debet. And that is not at a given time. that is each year, they then realize that, okay, we're not talking about 55, we're talking about 55 times 30 if we take the independence. So regions have been, there's been no investment, literally speaking, and the only hope, we were talking about the motivation earlier, the only motivation is how can I get out of this community? Our job is to make sure that the community itself is, again, bringing hope so that people stay.
Thank you very much, Korian. Madam Ambassador, this is your second time in Armenia. You've lived and worked in Armenia longer ago, let's say. I would like to ask you what opportunities you see in Armenia now compared to your previous stay here, and what has changed. Again, talking about the positive side that we have in some regions in Armenia today.
You see, I can only join what you said. When I was here the first time, I was impressed by people. But yes, they tried to get out. They tried to get out of the regions, and they tried to get out of Armenia, some of them. And you have a big variation. This I saw when I was here the first time. So Gymri is one of the beautiful places, I would say. I was there 2 days ago in the new tumor center, and I was just impressed. Yeah. What I see now, I see a change in behavior. Well, I was here in the capacity of a German ambassador. We tried to do the same. We tried to go out in the regions to offer opportunities in different areas. And I had sometimes the feeling that, let's say, our understanding was not totally met. So if you say you have to look after people, you have to create a good healthcare system, and not only one hospital here in Yerevan. So there was, okay, but I didn't have the feeling that there was a motivation to take up certain endeavors. And yes, we went out and we supported here and there local initiatives, because I totally agree. You have to motivate people, and it starts with the local communities. So the mayor needs to understand he has to make his village, his town, a better place. I see now a different feeling. I see an endeavor to really introduce reforms for the benefit of the people. And you cannot solve, in my understanding, within 2 years, problems that are there for 30 years. So we can only go step by step, but we have to make a decision where we go. And this is, for example, we do it here together with the Armenian government. We said we try to have 3 regions, which were among the poorest, which is Chirac, Lori, and Tavush. And now we will do the same. We go to the region where we are mostly needed. This is together with Gonzalo, we are really thinking over. And then I have another point which I think is very important. You need to have a combination of efforts on a national level, efforts on a community level. You have to get local businesses in, at least listen what they need, which addresses transport, infrastructure, but also education. Yeah, you need well-educated people, and then you need also civil society in the broadest sense. And this, I think, took a certain time, and there is really a change, I must say, after the Velvet Revolution, that I see there is an openness. We had together small projects both last year, together with COAF and others. In the COVID crisis, we had also the attempt to support people in need after the war. And I'm impressed by the quality of certain NGOs. Honestly, they were better prepared, they have better information, they knew where they deliver, they had a whole system. And this we have to broaden. So what I tell the government is take the experience you have, take the ideas, and let's make it a joint effort. But I see a willingness, and this is a great change. And naturally, well, after the war, I see now that there are many people who are traumatized. They are still under the spell. The events of yesterday, you see, they fuel the fear. And if you are afraid and if you are concerned about your security, you cannot be creative. So that's why I think we have to work together really to stabilize the situation. The European Union is willing to go also more into conflict resolution. But overall, I see a much more openness and initiatives. And I think the European Union did its small part by really promoting both civil society projects, but also really going local, working with local communities.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very important point. What we're hearing so far is very much on the psychological, emotional level. We heard about motivation, and now we're hearing about fear. Naturally, you cannot be motivated in a situation where security is compromised. So it's great to hear that that is being recognized. The crisis that Armenia faces can actually be a motivating situation as well. We want to come out stronger from all of this, but the question of security is obviously a very, very high priority. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. Armen, coming to this point of the different stakeholders. Madam Ambassador mentioned it, Korun mentioned it. I would like to ask you maybe, again, a bit of a delicate question, but because you said there are no regions that cannot be developed, and I completely agree. Looking at the potential of different regions in the country, which regions would you say are better placed when it comes to the different players in that region, the local players, their motivation, as well as the opportunities or the various sectors that exist in those regions? Which regions would you say are better placed for unleashing their potential as quickly as possible?
I think you've selected all the difficult questions for today, because that's there is no straightforward answers for everything. I think I would give a more general response. The regions where the local government, civil society, businesses, and the central government work harmonized with each other are the best regions to achieve success in a shorter time. The regions have to believe in their change. The regions have to understand that this change is their own change, and they will benefit individually and collectively out of that. If I may go a little bit back to what Madam Ambassador said about the recent situation and the security issues, I've worked in areas in Tavush where the village is right on the front line, where people have been facing these security issues for already decades. What I witnessed and we witnessed in these villages is that people do not leave because of security issues. People leave because they do not have economic opportunities to sustain their families. That's why looking back to the situations, I think it is still important that these people have the appropriate infrastructure. These people own their future. And I think it's our international community and the NGOs' task to help and facilitate people to identify their vision of their region or community, own it, inventorize what they have and what they lack, and then collectively with working with their local governments, with the central government, with their neighbors and the other communities nearby, work collectively, because collective working, I think, is the key word in this. No region can develop alone. No region can move forward because it will be at the expense of the others. It is very much important that that all local people and everybody understands that you will not be happy if you have billions of dollars in your pocket if your neighbor, who is your neighbor, and you see that the person every day is very poor and has no opportunities. Their kids are hungry, they're not going to school. So bringing back community as a community is the biggest challenge here. And that's why I think if we also focus on the regions in helping these regions and these people to decide what they want to be or where they want to be in 10 years' time, understand and own these issues. And at the same time, I would have to say that we, of course, would prefer to own these, we would prefer the local people to own their issues and the future and the changes, but at the same time it is important to bring in some innovative ideas, some I would say stimulus for these people, because if you start asking the people what you want and where you want to be, they will be responding with ideas that they have done in the past or they have heard in the past. That's why for us it is not only important to help them to own and move forward on their own, but also bring in alternatives and own these alternatives before moving forward.
Thank you very much, Armen. Koryun, I hope it doesn't become a trend that I ask you questions based on what Armen said, but it looks like so far we're going down that path. Given the experience that COAF has had working on the ground in these villages for already 17 years, how have you managed this local coordination with local players, whether it's local government, local organizations, youth groups, and so on? And how do you get your beneficiaries to own their future?
Yes, very interesting question and very challenging task, I have to say. There is a difference between informing and involving. Mostly what I've seen, and we've been also very critical about this ourselves at COAF, we inform people, we do not involve them. If you want to involve them, it takes much more time. It takes a lot of patience. And you, by involving them, you indirectly do capacity building. So a lot of goodwill, a lot of good resources, projects have come from different NGOs and agencies, European agencies in particular, in the regions. But what I've seen is, as a trend, is we have an idea which has been brainstormed and designed in the center of Yerevan, and we go with our prerequisites, you know, and preconditions, and we go in, we want to implement it. And sometimes we only focus on the implementation phase, which needs to be optimized on a speedy fashion, etc., etc. But we forget the people. We forget the locals. One of the latest initiatives we've had in Debet, once again, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk further about the Smart Village initiative. We've been participating to so many meetings and official meetings, not co-op and locals meetings, just locals meetings. And you get so much input from them. And then you realize, okay, you were completely on the wrong path. The way you were thinking would not work, or the timeline you had, it's going to take much more, or sometimes much less. So getting to know the people, that's one of the challenges. Number two is truly spending time. Time is of the essence, we all know this, especially when it comes to development of the rural communities. But we need to take time to truly investigate and get to know the real issues, So I invite everybody and ourselves as well and our team to invest time, not to try to focus only on the financial, but also on this factor which is called time. And I agree with Madam Ambassador. In 2 years, it doesn't take a year or two to develop a sustainable model. It takes time, once again, but you need to be, quick within that time frame. And you can't do things alone. Not even on an NGO or foundation level, but it needs to come from different partners. Among them is the state, the regional government, the local government, the people, and all the different stakeholders who are taking part in different initiatives. So time, collaboration, and then obviously, Armen, you talked about this innovation. We are fortunate enough in Armenia, I always say this as a diaspora repatriate, We have so much talent, so much knowledge with our counterparts in Europe and elsewhere. We can learn very quickly and learn the lessons that others have done wrongly. And Europe is a very good example. I was born myself in the EU and I participated to the construction of the European Union. I'm a huge EU fan. But why am I a huge EU fan? Because there is an African proverb, it says, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I would say it takes a lot of partners to develop Armenia. And in Europe, they showed that it takes a whole bunch of meetings and everything to develop and construct this great idea, which is the EU. We can learn from them. We're not good in learning from others, I think, and we can skip steps, right? We don't have to redo the industrial revolution just like in Europe. We can take a few steps forward and jump some period of time. So we will catch up quickly, and we won't, repeat the errors and the mistakes others have done.
Thank you very much.
I think you are totally right, and we learn too. Yeah, I think in the approach to our assistance, we don't come with tailor-made models. Yeah, we come and we tell you we do this. You need to have partners, and I think one of the areas where we have success is it is a lead project. It is also what we are doing with ADA. We could adjust. And we could learn that by giving sub-grants, you involve people. That's exactly, and I can tell you I worked in another rather difficult environment where when we wanted to integrate civil society, whenever they had an idea, you see, the authorities came and said, stay away, be quiet. So by starting really big programs where we involved local authorities, local players, and also civil society, we at least tried to have a greater openness on the side of the authorities. And there we are very good. And I want to say another thing. Armenia is in a difficult situation right now. And it is both the war, but also COVID. COVID taught us a lot that you need to be prepared. By the way, we were also not prepared in Europe. But we can overcome it together, and we can take a lesson learned together and move forward. There are many things which are bad due to COVID, but there is one thing we learned. Digital transformation is the key word. And the other one, which I want to say before I leave, green recovery. For me, this is really the essence, and not only because it is our priority in the European Union. If you have a country like Armenia with so many talented people, such a beautiful landscape, so it is a country for tourism. I was opening the landfill in Razdan. I saw it. I was shocked to see all this plastic flying around. So to teach people to be responsible for your own environment you are living in, not to leave, but to stay and make it a better place. And now we can see you have a high, let's say, quality in high tech. Go out, because with your laptop, if you have the right possibilities to really have a safe connection, you can work from wherever. And this is what we all learned. When I was doing in the German Foreign Service Human Resources, and we were talking about teleworking, people told me this is not possible, not in my section. It is so important. I need the people around. COVID taught us it is possible. So take the best out of this pandemic and let's develop this together in a brighter future. And also, sometimes I tell my friends in the government, say, look at certain things you have in your country. COAF is one of them. TUMO is another great thing where we are in, and we are very proud that this is one of our flagship projects. But to take this idea, to develop it, that's what we will do for the next 7 years now, together with business, with civil society and the government to decide which are the priorities. And then we have to be flexible. That's, I think, what we need. And with this, I leave you.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador, for your time. We have in the audience people who are also very, very experienced in doing groundwork in Armenia. And as Koryan mentioned, we can learn the lessons of other countries as well. So there may be lessons from Romania and lessons from Poland that could be relevant to Armenia. So I would like to take a couple of minutes and check to see if people in our offline audience have any comments on what we've discussed so far, the problems and the opportunities that exist in the regions of Armenia, before we go ahead with the discussion and focus more specifically on the work that each of our panelists is doing. Is there anyone who would like to comment on what we've heard so far? Yes, please.
Abraham Artashisyan, Communities Finance Officers Association. At the beginning, you mentioned some figures that showed how the difference between the communities and central. And I want to add one important figure, which is shows the fiscal decentralization between the national and local governments. And it just 95% of the public money spent by the central government. That means that the local authorities do not have any public money to provide services. That means that all we have in Yerevan, all we have is provided by the ministries, and in that case it's natural that people want to come to Yerevan because there is no public services, because we are speaking about the security, but also some health issues, there is social issues, there is education, there is a infrastructure that is missing in regions. So if we want to change something, we should first think how we can delegate the power and delegate the money from the central to the local levels. Thanks.
Thank you very much. A very important point, because we already spoke about the importance of involving different stakeholders, but the local stakeholders have a lot less to play with, let's say, a lot less resources to put into their work. So a very, very important point. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Okay. Our embassy, Polish embassy, sees the opportunity to develop in the regions in Armenia the awareness how to use the foreign funds, because there are many funds, international funds, but people are not prepared mentally to use them. So, and there are so many opportunities to use the international funds, but people are not prepared to write the grants, especially. So we are focusing now on this issue. We will have a project which in 5 regions of Armenia, just to teach them how to write grants and give them some ideas of some innovation projects or something like this. And this is what we are going to do, something concrete to boost, to change this behavior, this passive behavior, to open their mind what they can do. And we will start from this, maybe some other ideas will develop later. I think this is the right direction we should go.
Thank you. My name is Armenia Discussion. I come from the Urban Foundation. We have been working in the region since 2004, and we have accumulated a lot of experience in doing groundwork. And I just want to reiterate and emphasize the role of the local government in promoting any development agenda. We need, local governments require a lot of capacity development. They lack many capacities. Of course, some organizations, and including community finance officers organization, have done absolutely fantastic job in putting some systems, especially financial systems, in place. But it's not just about financial systems. This is because they are interested in this issue, because it's kind of a legal requirement. There is a very certain legal framework for doing that, and it is legally binding. But there are also issues, and what Koryun mentioned, involvement and engagement of citizens. It's kind of blurry from legal point of view, and therefore local governments, especially those local authorities who come from far past, they neglect this aspect of governance and local democracy. So we have a lot to do in promoting local democracy, and it involves not just investing money, of course it is, because investments are needed direly, but also in changing mindsets and changing behaviors and changing approach to governance issues at the local level. And I think we should start from the local level. And just one comment, yes, regarding the Polish representative mentioned now about the grants, training for grants. It is also a big issue because there are funds, but local authorities and local CSOs are looking for partners every time when they see a call, because they realize they cannot themselves. They do not have enough capacities to themselves do the job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So very important points, lots of capacity building needed, both at the level of local authorities, local organizations, as well as individuals, youth groups, and local organizations. Let's move forward now, and in this part of the discussion, focus more on what is being done by your organizations in the regions, and talk a little bit more, we've already talked a little bit, but talk a little bit more about the specific context, the crisis situation that Armenia faces today, and how we can do better in that situation. So let's start with the work that you are currently doing. Brigitte, could you please give us an understanding of what the lead approach is that is being used in the LEAD project in these regions of Armenia?
Thank you very much, Nazareth, but please give me 2 minutes to reply to the contributions, to the inputs from the colleagues before, because there was a lot about talked about motivation, capacity building. But please keep in mind that regional development, what we understand in the European Union, means a social, economic and territorial cohesion. So without just motivating people, involving people, this is only one aspect. I think we have to reach a strong commitment of the government here to introduce a really meaningful regional development policy, which is a multi-sectoral policy, because it's covering also the support for small, medium-sized enterprises, for startups, also capacity building, motivation. But I heard today mostly this, let's say, soft measures, but we need to support the companies. We have to engage the private sector. We have to build an environment that an entrepreneur in Armenia is ready to do an investment, to invest in innovation, to build a bridge between the enterprises and the research and development sector. Because in the research sector, many things are existing, but they are not applied what enterprises need. So we need a different, a portfolio of measures to bring the regions forward. And there is not only one way, like local development. We need also a strong regional policy from the national government, and then going down, working with the local governments in a partnership way, and in a also complying with subsidiarity principles. But we made really good experiences in Europe that we really do the decision, the planning on the lowest level close to the citizens. But of course the village in Chirac cannot decide what's going to happen in whole Armenia. For this we have a national government. So we need really strengthening education, capacity building, but also building the environment for a really prospering private sector development, which also means that the government has to make big efforts, and this I learned so far, that what we are really lacking here is the liquidity in the private sector. So the heavy access to receiving a credit line from the commercial banks. So we have to think about what are the measures to overcome these hurdles. So this is just beside motivation, involving people, we really need hard ideas how to support the private sector, how to educate the people that they are really ready for the labor market, that the companies then get the people in the rural areas also who can work in their enterprises. So what we are doing now, coming to this LEAD project, together with UNDP and FAO is mostly focusing on this local level. So we want starting really with this bottom-up approach, because at the end we need something from top down, but we need also the engagement, the awareness raising, and because as my colleague said here, informing people, they will just forget, but involving them, then they will start to understand what is the process. And I think what is also important in this respect is the trust building, because I went to many communities in Chirac region, and sometimes, of course, everybody is happy that we are coming, and but they would like to see results. You know, so we have to start with them this development process. We have to give them the perspective, what we can reach in a year, in 2 years, and we have to. There is motivation, but we need also to give them the tools, what to do with the motivation, right? So because just to be motivated can lead to something successful, but maybe something unsuccessful. So you need some support in terms of developing their businesses, cooperating with other businesses, starting the cooperation between the communities, because as Amen rightly mentioned, the communities have to work together. They have to learn to share their resources. And this is something we try to work on over the next 4 years, to bring these different sectors on the community level together to decide, to discuss, to identify their needs and come up with own solutions. But this is, let's say, the main framework, the shape of this LEAD approach, which is a methodology introduced in the European Union back already in the early 90s of the last century. So working quite for a long time. Successful and sometimes less successful. But I think it's a good approach, but it's only one approach to bring regions forward, I would like to mention also.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned already some of the outcomes, but Armin, I'd like to give you an opportunity as well to talk about what specific outcomes we can expect in the regions from this particular approach, the LEAD approach. What should we see in 4 years after the project is over?
Thank you. LEAD project, which is the replication of the LEADER methodology and the program in Europe, which also includes community-led local development approaches, is, in my opinion, pardon colleagues if I start to improvise a little bit, but this is building local champions to develop their own communities. LEAD project focuses not on artificially drawn administrative borders of the communities, but it brings in communities to unite on a more natural format. If there is some geographical or cultural or any type of commonality, the project will stimulate or encourage the people in these communities, all communities, to unite and work together, because they share the same lake, they share the same forest, they share the same environment or the opportunities. The project is, again, it's my personal interpretation, but the project will help those who want to help themselves. I mean, the project will not come and dictate whatever the project needs or thinks is important for them, but it is a very important step into this methodology to build the capacity of the people, to help them to organize themselves and to understand what they really need, to develop their long-term strategy, which is beyond individual communities' needs, but it is the combination of communities. Of course, linking to the regional development strategies, national development strategies, but still, people need to understand that community borders is not set, and community borders are only administrative decisions which a lot of times make sense because people need to also live in specific community borders, but at the same time these are not the final decisions, and people need to work with their neighbors in the next community, in the next region as well. So there's not a lot of limitation on that. The project itself stimulates the local people to come together and create so-called local active action groups, which is the LAG, which in its turn will get capacitated and trained and empowered to start harvesting project ideas and gathering opportunities locally and providing some mini grants for the local individuals to start moving forward. What is very important in this LEAD project, which I think is one of the important messages in this case, that LEAD project is not creating parallel governance structures, but it only brings together the representatives of local government, civil society, and businesses to work together collaboratively for the common good. And in this case, a lot of times I envision in the next 4 years of the project implementation to create some type of linkages that all these players that in other places might be difficult to bring together to work for common good will maybe work together and get into mutual dependency, and one producer will become the supplier of the other entity. The government will start learning from the experiences of the other players to fine-tune or develop new opportunities or regulations or stimulants, so that the local communities and the rural areas, because we're talking about rural development, but we're not talking about agriculture development. And we want the people in the villages know that they are empowered, their voice matters, they can do something on their own if they want to, and they have the skills and opportunities and infrastructure for that.
In fact, it sounds to me like a lot of the points that we've covered so far, like the lack of motivation, lack of capacity building or the need for capacity building, broad stakeholder management, all this seems to be at the heart of the project, which is very, very encouraging. Koryun, Armin did not mention smart villages, so I'm going to break my unwritten rule and ask you a question that is not directly linked to something that he said. Please tell us more about the smart village concept that COAF is implementing now. What is it? How did you decide to do this? And what outcomes do you expect to see?
With great pleasure. The Smart Village Initiative, we launched it, I have to say, before the war. It was last August. So it's not directly linked with the current situation, but it was during COVID. So we learned a lot of good amount of lessons from COVID and what it can teach us on working with remote areas or remote communities. One might think smart is all about technology. Well, I can tell you right now that it's not only about technology. Obviously, a smart village has a technological component. I'll give you a very simple example. We have, with our counterparts, implemented a fiber optic line to the municipality building and to the school, and that same telecommunication company will offer then to the inhabitants and residents of the village different plans and packages so that they can subscribe. So first thing we did was heavy investment into infrastructure, making sure that it's connected to the world, at least online. That was number one. The connection was very bad and very poor, etc. We all know all the difficulties the people face when they do not have this access to the outside world. So smart is about technology. Smart is about making sure that the technologies are green, the technologies are sustainable. Energy efficient LED lights for street lighting. That's one other example that we're soon going to implement. We've started phase 1. We are not yet done with the entire village. Obviously, SMART is about also the way we do development. SMART is, in English, it's also an abbreviation, as you all know, the specific, measurable, etc. We truly want to be at the forefront of data. So whatever we take as decisions need to be from a certain data. So we have conducted, for instance, in the entire village, 100% of population survey, population census. So we know a lot of confidential information, obviously, but it tells us a lot about the real situation of the community. And everything that we take as next steps are based on data. So it's a data-driven also approach that we're taking, smart way. The last but not least, it's also an integrated approach. As you know, we have opened in 2018 our flagship Co-op Smart Center in the Lori region, and it's exactly where Debet is located. So we're also using that resource, that campus that offers so much in terms of education, social enterprises, agriculture, etc., and attracting new partners into that approach. So it's not about going alone. It's about having some friends along the road, making sure that different perspectives are taken into account. I'd like to mention a couple of our partners that are already taking part of this big initiative. Number one is UNDP. UNDP has been implementing with us a demo site to develop the entire berry cultivation. My Forest Armenia is yet another very good example of how green solutions are maybe the future. They've created jobs, and they've made sure that there's also an awareness raising of how one should treat their own natural asset, which is in the Lori region, especially the forests. And many more other partners who will, I'm sure, join us in this initiative. Smart Village Initiative has 3 values. I'd like to share with you these 3 values that I think encompasses the whole spirit in which we are going forward. Number 1 is, and you might smile, but it's love. When we talk about love, and I think, Brigitte, you mentioned this as well, it's about relationship building. When you love a place, when you love your work, when you love the people you work with, then the relationship, the trust, right? You mentioned trust. Is natural. And when there is trust, when you know the people you're talking and working with, the speed in which you implement, the solutions you come up with are even more natural. So that, I would say, is number 1 value we cherish. It's love. We truly are passionate, and all the team members at Co-op are considering even themselves part of the Debet community. I've heard a lot of, oh, this is my Debet. So we talk about our community, our council meeting, our projects, etc. That's number 1. Number 2 is speed. The speed is of critical essence here. Why? Because if we want to motivate the community, a whole collective, community, if we want to give hope, you need to show results. And this is something also Brigitte mentioned earlier. If you want to show results, well, things that you implement, you need to make it happen fast. We have a challenge. This is an internal challenge, obviously, that we've thrown to ourselves, is week by week, week after week, we need something tangible. We need to make something tangible happen in that community. And when I say tangible something, we're not talking about meetings or workshops or anything like this. It can be an opening of a business. It can be an infrastructure project that's being accomplished, etc. And the number 3 is quality. And when we talk about quality, obviously it comes to mind that we want to, whatever we invest, it needs to be sustainable. So whether it's infrastructure projects, it needs to be sustainable. Whether it's SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, we need to make sure that the whole chain is taken into account, that there's a market, that there's a demand for that, etc., etc. So we're very excited. We've started this in August. We're already seeing a lot of results. I can tell you one thing, one success factor. Only one family has left for seasonal work this year, whereas in previous years we had almost 25 to 30 families who would naturally go abroad, especially to Russia, to seek opportunities. This year, only one family has left. This is, I think, a big, big success.
Thank you very much. Gonzalo, the EU has been investing in Armenia for many, many years, in the regions all over the country. We've heard today from the rest of the panelists different approaches to how they're working on the ground. In your opinion, what has worked well so far, given all the experience of the EU? And also moving into this last section of crisis management, what needs to change now when it comes to the development of the regions of Armenia in a crisis situation?
Great. Good afternoon to everyone. Thanks a lot for having the opportunity. I will try. I will do my best also to complement what Ambassador Victorine shared with you. When I was, and I maybe will be a bit not responding to the question first, but just sharing a bit of a reflection, because when I was listening to the speakers also, I could not avoid thinking about my region, because also, as Kurion said, we are EU citizens. I come from Spain, from the very south of Spain, and probably we cannot say anymore the poorest, but probably the region that at the time when we joined the European Union in '86, we were one of the poorest at the time and suffering a lot of inequality in relation to the rest of the European Union. And I'm very happy also to have the Romanian ambassador also with us, because I think he can also share with us how the European Union has helped to bridge the gap and to bring together all the EU countries and bring opportunities. So we had at the time significant levels, and still, of unemployment. And indeed, approaches like what we are trying to share here with you, with LEAD, what we call at the time also in Europe, LEADER, really help to make a change for my country and especially for my region, for the south, Andalusia. The LEADER approach, LEAD here in Armenia, brought hope and opportunities to people in the regions, in the most and deepest rural areas of Andalusia, notably to avoid migration, because I think at the beginning you gave some data about poverty, and indeed the numbers are astonishing, speaking by itself, of the disparities in the country, but that has a clear direct consequence on migration, and I think this is something that we really need to address, and that's why also regional development is the top priority for the EU while working here in Armenia. We need to give, again, opportunities and hope for people here in Armenia to avoid this migration to Russia or to countries in the European Union. I think just some days ago I was reading a bit of some statistics coming from the Central Aviation Committee, sharing a bit the numbers of people leaving and people coming. I think they share like 70,000 people more leaving than coming. There are many ways to interpret what's happening, but obviously this is also a consequence of, let's say, the dual crisis that we are facing in terms of COVID and also the post-war scenario. So regional development, top priority for the EU in Armenia, but for you is even more, for Armenia and for the Armenians, because for you is existential, because you were and you are facing also a very important demographic crisis. It's not only about people living and staying, it's about also birth, having children. And for that, indeed, I agree with what Kurion said before, we need to invest in people and invest in environments, because you can have the best health or education services, but if there are no good, let's say, and proper environment to get jobs, people will just leave, So I think this is a bit of the broader picture I wanted to share with you about migration, how we need to work together to avoid this emptiness in the rural areas. About your questions about what has worked well, I think we are at this stage after more than 20 years of development cooperation of the EU in Armenia, I think partly this question has been also already answered before. It's about ownership. You know, I think this is a critical, let's say, condition for any success and for any exercise that wants to be also sharing lessons for the future, if maybe they were not so positive. We all have to deliver results. We all have to, let's say, achieve success, and eventually sometimes we don't succeed, but we have to take the responsibility together and to learn so that the next, let's say, opportunity, investment is better, learning also of past possible mistakes. So on these, for instance, I think it's indeed very important to work, and it has been mentioned before, with central government and the regions and local authorities. We don't have with us today, but I can tell you that all of us are working very closely with them, with the Ministry of Territorial Administration. We have a fantastic Deputy Minister, Mr. Ratchet Terterian. We are working very closely with him. We need to work closely with them to understand the policies, the needs, the priorities. But as it has been also mentioned, there are important questions related to capacity building of our interlocutors also in the regions, in the central government, and on this also is a bit beyond the discussion today, but we have important interventions also in terms of public administration reform, in terms of making sure that we get the best also civil servants. You know, it's not only about politicians, but the ones that are really dealing with the people and getting closer to the reality on the ground. So these are, let's say, two essential, let's say, conditions. Ownership, that we involve all stakeholders, and working very closely with authorities, of course, always with the people. You know, you mentioned also briefly maybe the question of crisis management. You know, especially now that we are facing this dual crisis, COVID and post-war. I think this is only, let's say, exacerbating, you know, the scenario that we were facing before. All the challenges and opportunities are now moving faster, I would say, and we have to catch up, you know, because otherwise, in terms of poverty, migration, opportunities lost, they will be gone faster than before. So I think on this, we need to be creative, we need to be innovative, we need to catch up all the opportunities possible, and indeed also to give at the end these the ideal better conditions for the regions. Over.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask one more question open to all panelists, and then move the discussion also to the audience members. On this question of crisis management, what do you think needs to be done in addition to what is already being done, if anything, to particularly make sure that this dual crisis does not further exacerbate the situation? As Gonzalo said, it already is. So what can we do in addition to what is being done to, in this condition of dual crisis, at least not allow this gap to widen, or if possible to narrow it? Which of the panelists would like to take this question on? Brigitte, please.
So I cannot maybe really be so provide such a holistic solution. I can maybe point out some of the aspects. So I think it was already mentioned related to the COVID crisis. We all have learned our lessons, not only, or we have to learn our lessons from this really 1 year very exceptional situation. I think related to the economic sector, it was clear a boom in digitalization, home office, it was mentioned already. I think there is really now a high need that we get prepared, that everybody is equipped with all kind of information technology. And I would like to share one story with you from a school teacher in Gyumri, saying they had to go, not this year, but last year, to distance learning with the kids. But the kids, their family has maybe only one computer, if they have one computer. So the kids were following via the mobile phones of the parents the teaching of the teacher. But then the parents had to leave to their workplace. So, which means the children had no chance to follow the teaching of the school. So there are really families, especially those who are not so well equipped, and where is a shortage of money, and when there are several kids. And I think this situation where we lose the opportunities for the kids to follow the teaching, to be involved in the teaching during the classes, I think this situation has to be avoided in the future, and that really we are prepared for this situation. And I think there are a lot. I learned also in GUMI a lot of initiatives to teach people, also women, in digital marketing. So how to overcome this, also this season where no tourists were coming, maybe offering some other opportunities to communicate, to offer their services to the people. So I think we have to be creative, and we have to be really prepared, because it might not be the last crisis. Related to the political situation, I don't want to really, because I know too little about Armenia, but coming from Austria, and when I joined Vienna as a student, my university, Austria was in the middle, so let's say, of the so-called just behind the Iron Curtain, what we called it this time in the 80s. So Vienna was very exposed, and somewhere, at least we had the feeling, the end of the world, of the Western world, because we had Bratislava 70 kilometers away, Hungary is in 2 hours drive, Vienna is much more in the east than Prague. So how could we deal with this situation? And to be honest, I think it was the dialogue which brought forward Austria also building the relation with its neighbors, which were a bit outside of, in a different world, a different political situation. So this is just the dialogue, building relations, and going ahead with cultural events together, economic relations, and which helped us later on, when we said in '89 the Iron Curtain was falling, to have already very good relations with the neighbors. And I think this is very beneficial for both sides. I don't know whether this is transferable to Armenia, but it's an advice: go ahead, go closer to your neighbors, seek for the dialogue, seek for understanding.
Thank you very much. Let me just wrap up what we've heard so far today, and to do that I will use the 3 values that Korjun mentioned earlier for Smart Village, which I like very much. So this idea of love, we mentioned ownership. You have to love your community, your region, and own its problems as well as the opportunities that they provide. Speed, especially given the crisis situation that we have, there are problems that need to be solved quickly and opportunities that need to be grabbed quickly. And sustainability. And here this thought of stakeholder engagement is very important, capacity building is very important. So thank you very much for all the points that you've made so far this morning. I would like to turn now to our audience, and if you don't mind, Mr. Ambassador, I would like to put you on the spot and ask you, as Gonzalo said, in your opinion, what opportunities has the European Union opened in the region, and also for your reflections on what you've heard so far today. The Ambassador of Romania to Armenia, Your Excellency, Mr. Cornel Ionescu.
Once again, good morning or good afternoon. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I can tell you that I came here in 2019 in the middle of June. I started here my activity, but after that I even couldn't have the opportunity to go to the regions. Of course, for me now, because of COVID, it's one of the first occasion to see the people, to speak about the needs of our Armenian friends and potential partners. And what I heard here today, for me, is very important. I was thinking about our problems. For example, in Romania, we have maybe something similar, I should say, problems, not like in Armenia, but I was thinking about top priority of our government because of our working migration. Because a lot of people left Romania to work in a lot of countries, few countries. For example, Italy. For example, Germany. For example, Spain. And this is a most important problem because the people are trying to find a better condition for work and life. They ask to our government to create the similar condition. That's why we have a new created Minister of Regional of Environment and Regional Development in Romania. And of course, we don't have the examples of people who leave Romania to work in Russia in any case, but in the same time, I should say that I was generally consul of Romania to Rostov-on-Don. That's been a few years ago, in the place, in the center of Rostov-on-Don, which was named New Nakhichevan, the New Nakhichevan. And I saw a lot of people, Armenian people there. They have a very strong community. I was thinking, listen to you, two panelists. I was thinking about the fact that we have about 3,000 people, Armenians of Romania, let's say. And I think we'll try to find the possibility to connect the people, Armenian Romanians, with in parallel with governmental efforts to have a very good contacts with Armenia, with regions. I can tell you that because of COVID and because the government of Armenia didn't decide to name the co-chair of our intergovernmental commission for trade, economical and cooperation, we couldn't organize until the end of 2019 our first meeting after more than 8 years. We lose an opportunity, and now we try to find the best solution for this, because I cannot see 40 people, for example, from Armenia who could go to Romania to stay isolated for 14 days, and after that to start the negotiations with the Romanian colleagues. So I can only congratulate for the initiative Andrea Victorin and the team Europe from the European delegation, because for us it's a very, very good opportunity to have information. I was yesterday, 2 days ago in Gyumri, and I plan to go tomorrow to Debet. For me, will be a new experience. I hope very useful, and thanks again for a very, very interesting conversation here.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Is there anyone else in the audience? Yes, please.
Thank you. Rafi Kasarjian with the Union of Advanced Technology Enterprises. We represent many of the large tech companies here in Armenia. I wanted to go back to the panelists from ADA's points around private sector involvement in development in the regions. And I think there are a couple of points. One is that when we think about regions, right, I mean, immediately we think about villages, but I think we need to think about villages and regional centers, towns, because obviously not all private investment at least can be done at the individual village level. We've taken that approach by saying that we have Here we, no. Thank you. We have a program, RMAT, the engineering laboratories, which brings STEM education to currently 575 public schools throughout Armenia and Artsakh. And there we do things, at the village level. But we've had a big issue in that Nazaret mentioned that 54% of GDP is concentrated in Yerevan. All the brightest students do well in these engineering labs, come to university in Yerevan, and never go back to their village, right? And so now we're focused on how do we move from kind of giving people opportunity through education and training to creating job opportunities for them to stay where they are. I think the COVID has been, in that sense, has been a blessing because most of our companies operate at least partially online now and are used to having their teams distributed. And I think many will continue that way, and it gives us an opportunity now. So now what we're focused on doing is at least creating in the regional centers, the cities, co-working spaces so that companies, instead of having to open offices in each of these individual cities, can have a place where even when they hire from somebody from the village, they can come to this co-working space to work and have shared services such as HR and finance and so forth. So I think thinking about the next step in terms of creating opportunity is very important. Thank you.
Բարևձեզ, Աննա Ալեքսանյան, Վինետ Հայաստան կանանց ռեսուրս կենտրոններից ցանցն եմ ներկայացնում։ Մեր ցանցը գործում է, մենք հենց ռեգիոնալ, այսպես ասած, մարզերում աշխատող կազմակերպություն ենք, ունենք ավելի քան 9 ռեսուրս կենտրոններ Հայաստանի 5 մարզերում։ Ես ինքս Գորիսից եմ, Սյունիքի մարզի կենտրոնն եմ ներկայացնում եւ կուզենայի ուղղակի ողջունել լիդ նախաձեռնությունը այն առումով, որ իրականում մենք մի քիչ որպես կանանց Վինետ Հայաստան փորձառություն ունենք ուսումնասիրելու լիդեր մոտեցումը։ Անցած տարի մենք փոքր ծրագրի շրջանակներում մի փոքր հետազոտություն իրականացրեցինք, ուսումնասիրելով նաև Մոլդովայի եւ Վրաստանի մեր գործընկերների փորձը լիդերի կիրառման Մոլդովայում եւ Վրաստանում, հետաքրքրված լինելով այդ լիդեր գործիքի ներդրմամբ Հայաստանում, ու նաեւ օգտագործելով Վինետի կանանց ռեսուրս կենտրոնների մոդելը որպես համայնքային զարգացման մոդել, տեսնելով որոշակի նմանություններ, բայց իհարկե որոշակի նաեւ փոխլրացման հնարավորություններ ինտեգրելով այս երկու մոդելները եւ իրականում ինչում տեսանք լիդեր առավելությունը եւ կարեւորությունը Հայաստանում դրան ներդրման, որ մենք որպես ռեգիոնում գործող կազմակերպություններ տեսանք, որ իրականում շատ մենք կենտրոնանում ենք տեղական իշխանությունների եւ քաղաքացիական հասարակության եւ ընդհանուր շահառուների վրա բաց թողնելով մի շատ կարեւոր կետ մաս, որ բիզնեսներ, մասնավոր հատվածներ, որ իրականում շատ կարևոր մասն է կազմում համայնքային զարգացման ծրագրերում, եւ ոչ մի անգամ կամ շատ քիչ է եղել ուշադրության կենտրոնում հենց ՔՀԿ-ների կողմից մոտ, ովքեր որ աշխատում են համայնքներում, աշխատում են հենց համայնքային զարգացման նոված ռազմավարություններում եւ իրականում այս հետազոտությունը եւ հետագայում նաեւ մենք առիթ ունեցանք ծանոթանալու լիդ ծրագրի առաջիկա պլաններին եւ շատ ողջունում ենք այս ծրագիրը եւ նմանատիպ ծրագրերի իրականացումը հենց համայնքներում։ Մեր կազմակերպությունը մի քիչ ավելի կենտրոնացած է, իհարկե կարող է անունը հուշում է, որ մենք կանանց կազմակերպություն ենք, բայց իրականում շեշտադրումը դնելով կանանց մենք նաեւ կարեւորում ենք համայնքներում ապրող բոլոր այն խմբերի կարևորությունը եւ նրանց ներգրավվածությունը համայնքային զարգացման ծրագրերում, որոնք որ որոշակի չափով խոցելի են կամ դուրս մղված են եւ նրանց համար մեր համար կարեւորը որ համայնքային զարգացման ծրագրերում ներգրաված լինեն բոլորը եւ այդ հնարավորությունը տրված լինի բոլորին, այսինքն այդ հնարավորություն բոլորի համար սկզբունքը մեր համար շատ կարեւոր է, որովհետեւ մանավանդ գյուղական համայնքներում կան շատ խմբեր, որոնք որ իրականում մեծամասնությունն են կազմում համայնքում շահառուների, բայց նրանք որոշակի ձևով մարգինալացված լինելով իրենց մասնակցություն չեն ունենում եւ շատ դեպքերում նրանց կարեւորագույն կարծիքը եւ մասնակցությունը դուրս է մնում հենց կարեւորագույն ծրագրերից։
Let me quickly repeat and summarize because a few of our guests were
had a delay in turning on the translation devices. Anna from the WINET network of resource centers, women resource centers in Armenia, said that they have studied the leader approach and they've acquainted themselves with the LEAD project and find the involvement of local businesses to be very, very important. At the same time, having the experience of working with women and other marginalized groups across the country, there is always this risk that there will be marginalized groups that will not be able to take the full advantage of these projects. And we spoke about motivation, for example. You might have this situation where you have people with higher motivation who grab all the opportunities, while the marginalized groups who have lower motivation end up once again being left out. A vicious cycle. Thank you very, very much, Anna, for that important point. Are there any reflections from the panelists so far on what was said in the audience? I think we've covered a lot already today. Any remaining questions or comments from the audience members? We have a couple of online questions that we would like to sound out. So,
thank you. Right, so the first question asked from the audiences online, thank you very much for following us, by the way, is what are the plans for the regional development in Armenia? So what are other project plans?
So let me start with Gonzalo. What other project plans do we have? And then maybe a very, very quick one thing to look forward to in each project from the other panelists as well. Gonzalo.
Yeah, great. No, it's indeed a good question. I think we were indeed working very closely on this question of strategic planning for regional development. Again, working with Mr. Terterian in the Ministry of Territorial Administration, with all the regions, local authorities. There were massive consultations, with all stakeholders. But then COVID hit us, and then we had the war. So we are in discussion again with the government, and probably also once we have, after the elections, a bit more of stability in the country, I think we're going to be picking up again the issue in terms of policies and plans. I agree that there are many other questions and elements, investments that we should not be waiting. But so just to say that we are indeed working in that direction in terms of planning, but also among ourselves as EU, and as the ambassador mentioned, as Team Europe. We are also precisely these days reflecting about the future of our cooperation in Armenia, for the next period of 2021 to 2027. And we are indeed taking into account the new evolving reality in the country, with a lot of consultation with many of you. I know that you have been very much engaged already. So we are going to be, let's say, upgrading and modernizing also a bit our cooperation in view of the challenges and opportunities, and some of them related to the regional development. But we will be, of course, working in many other sectors and areas. So plans are coming, but I think indeed we need to get into actual implementation as soon as possible, and delivery for the people, tangible results. Over.
Excellent, thank you. So, if I may, one sentence each on a specific tangible result that you each expect to deliver through your project in the near future. Koyun, let's start with you.
One sentence is tough, but within the healthcare sector, we will soon launch the construction of a very ambitious health center in the region. It will be located in Dessert this time. And we're doing this with in cooperation with the Ministry of Health of Armenia, as well as the regional authorities of the Lori region. We are redefining a little bit. It will be a public institution, a public-private partnership, actually, but ultimately it will be publicly owned, and it will fully integrate into the existing network of the healthcare system that we already have. So we're bringing the healthcare in the Lori region to yet another level.
Excellent, thank you very much. Brigitte?
We will mostly in the near future go directly to the communities to work on their needs and help them to prepare projects, increasing the capacity to absorb the given resources, and working with them using their knowledge, their understanding of their rural areas to come up with good solutions for their villages, improving the livelihood in the villages in Chirac.
Thank you very much. Armen?
Very briefly, in terms of the lead project in Tavush and Lori, there will be a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions, a lot of animation in the regions to expect. So I would recommend our friends and potential counterparts to be very attentive to a lot of announcements of UNDP and EU in terms of for not missing the opportunities and being able to participate and voice their own concerns. But overall, if I also can speak on behalf of the UNDP, UNDP has a lot of projects in Armenia, both in currently implemented and in the pipeline. So I guess we are covering almost all sectors and nearly all regions. So a lot of things are happening. It is just a matter of being informed and getting the right information at the right time and coming up with your own initiative in interest and investment, because we want people to participate and make sure that they also own part of the work.
Once again, that keyword ownership. Do we have another online question? 3 more online questions. Wow.
Right. The first one is very, very easy. It's either for Brigitte or for Armen to answer. Where can we find more information about the LEAD project in Armenia? This is an easy question, so I ask another one. How can we promote community and economic development in communities and ensure fair and impartial access to credit in undeserved markets?
So, Brigitte, maybe you can answer the question about more information, and then we can, or whoever would like to take where to get more information on the LEAD project.
Actually, we are setting up our communication channels, so we are found on Facebook, because I think it's very popular here in Armenia. So Lead for Chirac. So please note down. There you find all the activities related to our project. Of course, also on the website of the Austrian Development Agency, you find information. And just come and visit us in Gyumri. We are sitting in the Gyumri Technology Center, so whenever you are in the region, you are interested what we are doing there, we would really like to have a face-to-face meeting and online calls, and I think so whatever we are doing, we will have a regional launch event in June. So we are going ahead also with communication using TV and newspaper channels. So we will become very active in the future, so nobody should miss us.
Thank you. That's Lead for Chirac. That's formally there are 2 separate projects if we look at it formally. So, Armen, what about Lead for Lori and Lead for Tavush?
I hate to be repeating the similar information, but Lead for Lori and Tavush is not different. We have a Facebook page specifically for the project setup, where we share the ongoing events and announcements and results sometimes whenever we already have quick results. So I would recommend everybody to follow the page in Facebook and stay informed. And we have also pretty interactive questions that we always address and respond whenever possible. As we are at the very beginning of the implementation cycle, we are still launching more channels of communication. However, I would recommend the Facebook, and also please be attentive in your own communities and in your own villages. We are not operating over Facebook only. All our events will also be spread to your local municipalities, your mayor's offices, or your local organizations. Please keep your eyes open, look around, and don't only focus on one technological channel only. That's much for me.
Thank you very much. Koyo, let me put you on the spot with the second question about economic opportunities in underserved communities. Given the work that COAF has done, but briefly if possible, because we're very short on time, what do you think can be done to provide more economic opportunities in underserved communities in Armenia?
Well, first off, economic development, I think, is the main driver for growth and for development, that is for sure. But it needs to go in parallel, just like my colleagues mentioned, with infrastructure development and obviously capacity building. What we've seen ourselves with COOF, whether it's Debet or in the Armavir region, Aragatutan region, where we also operate, is there is a clearly there is a lack of creative and innovative solutions when it comes to economic development. What we've seen is people tend to focus on the obvious. They tend to also come up with ideas, business ideas that are very common, that they've seen or they know. So in lately, for instance, in Debet, we had a call for application for small to fund to finance small and medium-sized enterprises. Very few truly made an effort, locally speaking, to come up with something. It can be unique, or a niche product, or even something properly written. And I heard in the audience, people said grant writing is an issue, innovation is an issue, and so on. So what I'd like to suggest is truly take the time locally to research, to analyze what's needed, where the market is, to always link the offer and demand, because that's not always the case, and to make sure that whatever you will do will always get somewhere in the market. So it needs to be very market oriented.
Thank you very much. Yeah, briefly, if possible.
Very briefly, if I may also add to that. Businesses usually, there's no magic pill to give to all communities to develop their business opportunities, because each community have their own strengths, resources, and also experiences. But what I can also stress out is that for the business community, it is very much important to focus on setting and running a sustainable business. Sustainable not only in terms of green and environmentally friendly, but if the business is considered become sustainable or respect the needs of the society, or respect the needs of the community, like community-friendly businesses, in this case, not only the profits will come, but also they will become friends of the communities where they set the business. And in this case, I'm sure that a sustainable growth and the mutual benefits of the operation will be manifold instead of one profit going on.
Yep, thank you very much. Yeah, Brigitte, please.
I would like just very briefly to add. So as the ambassador from Romania and also González know from Spain, rural development is actually a policy under the EU Common Agricultural Policy, right? So actually this came up to strengthen the farmers and to diversify the activities in the rural areas, to generate income outside also of agriculture. So which means we have here also in Armenia, in the regions, we have a lot of businessmen in the rural areas. These are the farmers. We just have to make them really competitive in the areas where they are acting already, and this is done with rural development policy in the European Union. And also to support and give them ideas to create diversified activities. So I think we are not here talking about the theory how to bring businesses to the rural areas. We have businesses in the rural areas. We have just to open their their field of activity, opening to tourism, to services, to the communities, to any other kind, and renewable energy. So we have businesses there, just we have to modernize them and we have to give them ideas.
Yeah, I think it's a lot about innovation and sustainability, the two keywords in this area. Yeah, create new products, niche products, and make them sustainable financially as well. So our last question from the online audience.
Right, I think this is the question for the EU for Gonzalo. What is the approach to community development through EU projects? Is it neighborhood beautification, affordable housing efforts, job creation, small business development, or supporting small farms? How can we revitalize the idea of a community in Armenia?
Well, that's a very complex, very comprehensive question, but I think as we are also now coming to the very end, let's say, of our discussion today, I think, as I said before, maybe we need to be creative, innovative, and also adaptive, I would say, because we cannot come, even with a leader or lead approach, let's say, with magic recipes or magic pills for our beneficiaries, for our communities. I think we need to listen. We need to, let's say, discuss, engage, spend a lot of time knowing our interlocutors, our communities in the region, and then together decide about where the opportunities are, the challenges, and then we move forward together with the, let's say, investments, projects that we all, from the international community, we are trying to offer together with many NGOs. So we do everything and nothing, in a sense. No? We have to adjust to the problem, to the opportunities, and then we collectively deliver together, I would say, in a sense.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you for this stimulating discussion. I would like to quickly repeat one phrase that Gonzalo used earlier. This is an existential issue for Armenia and the people of Armenia. I said in the beginning it's a vital discussion that we're going to have today, a crucial discussion. This is definitely a very, very important topic, one that has existential significance. I would like to thank once again the panelists today, Mr. Armen Tiraturian from the UNDP, representing the lead for Lori, lead for Tavush project. Mr. Gonzalo Serrano from the EU delegation. We also had earlier in the morning Her Excellency Ambassador Andrea Victorin. Brigitte Mehlmauer from the Austrian Development Agency, representing the lead for Shirak project. And Mr. Koryun Khachaturian from the Children of Armenia Fund, COAF. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much to the audience members and the online audience as well. Have a nice rest of the day.